Welcome back, Witches and Wizards. Today we're going to do another Surviving Saturday story. Now, for this story, I thought I would tell you about the one time I got my dad to call the cops. I felt so bad when I grew up and I realized the consequences of my actions. But what happened was when I was probably about 5 or 6, it was a weekend. And I wanted to go and visit my friend who lived just a little bit down the street. I told my sister I told my mom. I told my mom because my dad was at work and my mom was at home. I said, "Mom, I'm going to go over to my friend's house." She said, "Okay." And so I wandered off to my friend's house. And when I got there, her family wasn't home. No, her dad wasn't home. Mom's, herself, her sister, all of them were gone. No idea where they went. So I was like, oh, okay. So on my way back, my friend's next door neighbor was this saint of an elderly woman. She was like the perfect grandma version of someone. And she goes, "Oh, they're not here, sweetheart. Do you want to come over and we can wait until she comes back?" And me being the dumb and naive little girl, I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I went over to the woman's house who was just next door. But before I went in there, I knew I had to tell somebody. So I was like, "Oh, I'll come over, but I'm going to go and tell my family." And I looked around and I actually saw my sister. It was my eldest sister, the sister from the previous story. And I told her, I said, "Hey, I'm going over to," I said to her, "I told Mom I was going over to my friend's house, but they're not there. So I'm going to go and wait for my friend at her neighbor's house." And I pointed to the house and showed her the woman and all that, the elderly woman who was in the doorway. And I said, that's who I'm going to be staying with for a little bit while I wait for my friend." And she goes, "Okay," and kind of just blew me off. And I'm like, "Go tell Mom." And she's like, yeah, whatever. And remember, if I'm about 5 or 6, she would have been about 7, 8. No, 8 or 9. She would have been about 8 or 9 years old. So I was really trusting her. I was really trusting her to tell Mom that that's where I was. So I was hanging out with this woman, and we were looking at magazines and all that. She gave me some sweets because she had a lot of candy in her house. And all that. And we chatted, and it was very nice. And me being a child with ADD, I totally lost track at the time. And next thing you know, I'm looking at this Halloween magazine, which I love Halloween, so I was like obsessed with it. I was looking at all these recipes for like Halloween cookies, Halloween decorations, and all that. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is awesome." And I totally lost track of time. And I looked out the window and I noticed it was actually pretty dark outside. And I was like, "Oh no." So I went to the woman and I said, "Hey, it's dark. I'm going to go now." And she says, "Okay, do you want me to walk you home?" And I'm just like, "No, it's fine. It's fine." And I'm like, "I just live down the street. It's fine." And she goes, "Okay, well, you stay safe, sweetheart." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll stay safe." I open the door. She waves goodbye to me. And I thought it was the best day ever. I was like, I made a new friend. She gave me sweets. I got to look at Halloween magazines. It was awesome. And I look around as I'm walking home, and I notice that there's a bunch of cop cars. There are cop cars, and I'm seeing police officers walking around. So I'm like on the, like, kind of the middle of the road, because there's the way my street is back at my old house when I was a kid is that we lived on a street that was like in the shape of a horseshoe. And then there was another street that connected both ends of the horseshoe in the middle. So it kind of made like a weird curvy A, almost. And we lived on one side of the horseshoe, as I would describe it. And my friend lived in the middle part, the connecting part. And that's where the old lady lived. The nice elderly lady. And she lived on the connecting part as well. So I knew like hardly any cars ever use that except for when people need to go or come home. They need to leave home or come home. But it was the weekend, it was late, and I was smart enough to know that, hey, if I see a car coming, I just got to go and get onto the sidewalk. And they drive slow because this is it's not a residential area, but like literally families live here. It's an unofficial residential area where there's lots of children. And so as I was walking by, I noticed there was lots of cop cars and a lot of cops. And I kind of just stop and I'm just like, what's going on? Why are there cops here? And all of a sudden I look up and I look towards where my house is and I see my dad. And I'm like, oh, cool, Dad's home. So I'm like, hey, Dad. And I wave at him. And my dad looks at me and he runs right at me. And I'm just like, whoa. And I look behind me. He's like, is there a car? No, there's no car. Why is Dad looking panicked? Why is he running at me? Like, what's going on? I was really confused. And so he's charging at me. And the moment he gets to me, he like scoops me up and he looks at me and he's like almost yelling, like, where were you? And I'm just like, I was at this lady's house. And I think at this point, like the elderly woman didn't see the cops outside because she saw me like head towards home and she waited a little bit, but then she like closed the door. And so she wasn't there. So she had no idea what was going on. And I'm like, I was at that lady's house. We had candy and was looking at magazines. And my dad's like relieved, but also furious. He's like, why didn't you tell anybody? I'm like, I did. I told my sister. I said, tell Mom that I'm over at so-and-so's house. And he goes, well, you told your mom that you were going to be at your friend's house. I'm like, yeah, and they weren't there. So I was waiting at the lady's house for my friend to come back. And I told my sister to go and tell Mom. And he goes, no one knew where you were. And he was like, I think he was on the verge of tears. So I was like, starting to realize like, oh, I'm in trouble. Like I did something very bad. And my little kid brain is starting to process. I was like, oh, these cops may be here for me. And so my dad takes me home and he puts me in the house. And then he leaves. And my sister, the one that I told her where I was, looks at me and she goes, you're in so much trouble. And I looked at her and I'm like, I told you where I was. I told you to tell Mom. And she goes, you should have told her yourself. And I'm like, what? And my mom, oddly enough, I don't think my mom was that concerned. Which should have been a sign that she may not have been the greatest mom, but I'll like, whatever. But she was like, yeah, did you not see the cops outside? I'm just like, yeah, what was that about? I'm like, we didn't know where you were, so Dad called the cops. And I'm just like, oh no. It was because of me. And my dad gets home after talking with the police officers and all that. And he just basically talked to me about I did an okay thing by telling someone where I was going, but I shouldn't tell my sisters because what happens if my sisters weren't home or if they didn't get home? Because apparently what happened was my dad got home and my sister, who I had told, didn't get home. She wasn't at home. So she didn't tell my mom where I was. So my dad was like, oh, where are the kids? And my mom was like, oh, so-and-so, one sister's at one location, the other sister's at the other location, and I'm at my friend's house. And so my dad's like, okay, well, I'll just go and tell them that supper is on the, getting ready and all that. Back during the days when, you can go out whenever you want as long as you're back by the time that the streetlights come on. But whatever. My dad's like, well, supper's almost ready. I'm home. Let's I'll go tell the kids and all that. And so he got the other two sisters. He got my other two sisters because they were just out on the streets and all that. And said, hey, go home. Supper's ready. And so they were on their way home. And my dad goes to my friend's house. And my friends are home. And my friend is home at this time with her family. But I didn't know because I was so obsessed with reading these magazines and all that. And they asked, like, hey, can you tell my child that dinner's ready and all that she needs to come home? And they're like, she's not here. And my dad's like, what? So my dad books it back because my friend's family said, yeah, no, we were out. Your kid never came here. Like, we just got back ourselves. And so my dad books it back over to my house and asks my mom, like, where is so-and-so? And my mom says, over at a friend's house. And he goes, she's not there. Where is she? And my mom's like, I don't know. And my sister, who I told where I was, didn't say anything. She either forgot or didn't care. Or thought, you know what, this will be funny. So my dad immediately goes into panic mode, calls the cops. And so there's a missing child now where I'm just literally down the street for next door to where I said I was going to be. And so I was in a little bit of trouble, but, I'm a dumb 6-year-old. It wasn't until as I got older, I realized how things work when you have a missing child and the cops are called. I felt so bad because I realized they must have grilled this woman that I hung out with so hard on information about where I was and what she was doing with me and all that. Just saying blah, 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 blah. It must have been just grilling her for with questions and all that. And this elderly woman has no idea what's going on. And strangely enough, I still occasionally visited her, not to hang out or anything, but she would give us sweets whenever we went to the door. So we would knock on the door and just say hi and all that. And she goes, hey, you're back. Do you want some candy? And we're just like, yeah. And I told my other sister, Goop, I said, Goop, follow me. I know this nice lady that gives us free candy. And it doesn't have to be Halloween. So we would go and visit her and get candy. And I felt so bad when I got older and realized that I probably put her in a really bad situation with being an abducted child or a missing child. Oh my gosh, I felt so bad. And then we just kept coming back for candy. So more of the story, kids, tell your parents where you are. Even if the plans change, tell them. Or else someone's going to call the cops and you're going to feel guilty because whoever is with you is going to be harassed by the cops. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell for future notifications. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye!